We traveled from Pennsylvania to the small Central American country, roughly the same size, Guatemala. But despite its small size, there are plenty of reasons one might choose to visit. We came here to experience the ancient Mayan culture, Spanish colonial architecture and ruins, world-class coffee, and to check something off of our bucket list. See an active volcano. In our last video, we spent the first 3 days of our trip exploring Lake Atitlan. We heard indigenous Mayan languages being spoken, ate traditional Guatemalan food, drank coffee grown right on site, and of course enjoyed some amazing volcano views. In part 2 of our Guatemala series, we begin day 4 of our trip shuttling from Lake Atitlan to Antigua. It's around a 3-hour drive up over the mountains and even through a river. Antigua is a charming city and it's a destination in its own right. Our primary reason for coming here was the nearby volcano Hobbitenango, which looms in the distance. Antigua is the starting point of an overnight hike that we would be doing later in the week. But we also made sure that we had a few free days in the city. It sits right at the base of another volcano, Volcán de Agua. It's full of color, beautiful architecture, and due to its history, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Antigua was founded during the Spanish conquest in 1543 and served as the capital for over 200 years. It's considered one of the best preserved examples of the colonial period, as much of its Baroque architecture, colorful cathedrals, and cobblestone streets have been seemingly frozen in time. This is because repeated earthquakes in the 1700s forced the capital to be moved to the nearby Guatemala City, which left Antigua mostly abandoned. We couldn't wait to experience the mix of Spanish and Mayan culture, eat delicious food on the endless rooftop restaurants, and of course, make some more dog friends.
Welcome to our room at Selena in Antigua, Guatemala. Cute little room. We have our own private bathroom. Tiny, but does the job. Pretty big shower, honestly, for how small the bathroom is.
Not bad for a hostel.
Yeah, and it came with shampoo, conditioner, and body wash, which is nice.
Ey, ey, y aprovechame hoy, que mañana me voy.
Selena is a chain of hostels that many people are probably already familiar with, but this was our first time staying in one. For around $100 US a night, we got a private room. It's not super backpacker budget friendly, but it was absolutely gorgeous and we think it was well worth the money. It wasn't really a total party hostel, but it also wasn't that quiet and relaxing. It was kind of a mix of somewhere in between. We checked out all of the amenities, met the ground supervisor, and headed out into the city for the evening. On our way to dinner, we got our first glimpses of the colonial architecture and cobblestone streets. For dinner, we tried out a place that was always mentioned when we were looking up recommendations online. We got our first rooftop experience, and the beer, food, and views were all excellent.
Something to say.
Cheers.
It was time to head back to the hostel for our welcome drink. Every night, they host a free drink and activity for all of the new arrivals. We played a classic game of boys versus girls Pictionary, where us boys won a nail-biter of a game. It was a fun time and definitely a cool way to meet people, especially if you're more introverted like us.
Buenos dias. I feel like Dora the way I just said that. We're gonna go to the arch before it's too late. It's already 7:30, so hopefully the crowds aren't too bad and the volcano is out. Breakfast, coffee, little hike. Let's go.
We headed out and made our way over to the most iconic attraction of Antigua, the Santa Catalina Arch. It was built in 1694 for kind of an interesting reason. There was a convent of nuns on one side of the street and a school that they taught at on the other. Since they weren't allowed out in public, the arch was built and it allowed them to cross the street without being seen. Today, the arch is basically the symbol of the city. It's plastered all over postcards and magnets with Volcán de Agua in the background. Another day, another beautiful rooftop. We made our way across town to one of the most popular things to do in Antigua. Hike to the Cerro de la Cruz viewpoint. It's about 10 minutes up to the top, and the path is all stairs. It's not too bad, and definitely worth the view. You can see the entire city sitting right at the base of the volcano. There are vendors at the top selling fruits, drinks, and souvenirs. It was time to head back down into the city and check out some of the famous ruins. Antigua is known to have over 30 churches, convents, and monasteries, many of which were left in a state of ruin after numerous earthquakes in the 1700s. Construction of this convent was completed in 1736, and it was the last women's convent to be built in Antigua. The order and its nuns were forced to abandon the complex shortly after the 1773 earthquake. Solo cuando veo las fotos y los videos que tengo de ti, salí con otra para. The nuns that lived here agreed to a very rough life. They weren't allowed off the property or to be seen by anyone. They lived in poverty by way of donations only, and fasting was often a requirement. In contrast, today the complex is mostly known for hosting lavish weddings. We continued along and stumbled upon this little park surrounded by colorful churches and ruins. We bought some drinks from a corner store and listened to a free concert that was being put on before continuing our sightseeing. Next up was the convent of Santa Clara. The complex is huge and takes up an entire city block. It was founded in 1699 by 5 nuns from Mexico. Construction took 16 years to complete, just for an earthquake to destroy it only 2 years later. It took years of repairs that were finally finished in 1734, where the convent stood for another 39 years. Then, in 1773, another massive earthquake caused a bunch of destruction. The nuns were forced to move to Guatemala City, and the complex has sat abandoned for over 200 years.
We spent the entire morning exploring Antigua, from all these little ruins to the little hike that goes up to the cross, and we're both crashing really hard, so I think it's time for lunch.
And then Starbucks.
But the Starbucks is fancy.
What did you just eat, babe?
Fuego rough right in front of us at lunchtime. It just did it again.
Que si me ven con otra en una disco, sale perdiendo el tiempo. Baby, pa' que te miento.
We're at Starbucks because they make coffee with Guatemalan beans. And it's fancy.
Y eso es Grupo Frontera y el compa Bad Bunny.
We made our way back to the hostel and headed for the lounge chairs, excited to do some relaxing, maybe get some reading done.
We're going to a pizzeria. Yeah, the Rooftop. Maybe we'll get a cerveza? I don't know. We'll see. But it'll be. Actually, I don't know where we're going.
Con mi compa flaco arremangando, unos guaraches en mi gorra de lado, por la zapata el oro trae el mando, tirando líneas.
This pizza restaurant was super cool because from the rooftop, you could see the ruins of an old church next door.
Y mi rete en Acapulco y se pedo los sepulto. Y aquí no andamos haciendo bulto al chingazo. Yo resulto de una gloxona que va conmigo siempre lista.
Crispy.
Y que sigan llegando las pacas, tu compa chinito. Puro paso al alto.
Oh my god. I did not know you were recording.
Mi compa Power y también el Mau me hacen segunda, nunca me han dejado. Mi compa Sapo sí hay pedo brinca a la orden en una tira verga.
We were still full from dinner, but we got to check out the nighttime street food vendors, which were set up right down the road from our hostel.
Si no tiene chiste, yo soy el oro para que se ubiquen y en una moto yo les caigo en 15.
We headed back and spent some time in the hammock before bed. We woke up to the clearest sky yet, so we made our way over to the arch and got those quintessential Antigua shots.
Ella trata de aguantar y no se enoja. Te da más amor porque no quiere perderte. Pero que va, ya por ti no llora más. Hoy yo voy a pedirle que te deje porque
We're walking to breakfast and we finally are getting a super clear visual of Hobbitenango that we're gonna hike tomorrow. and Fuego next to it, which you can see just erupted. There's a puff of ash and smoke above it.
We'll be there tomorrow.
Pretty exciting and nerve-wracking. Oh. There's another one.
Esta noche va a cumplir con mi misión. Es que tú repitas el pedazo de mierda es él y no soy yo.
Where are we going?
Hobbitenango.
The truck ride takes you out of town and up into the mountains.
Welcome to the Shire.
The mini Hobbit town has excellent views of the surrounding mountains and Volcan de Agua. There are plenty of food and drink options and photo spots. We spent most of our time just wandering around, exploring the trails, finding different viewpoints. There are a few activities that you can do, like archery, mini golf, and even a big tree swing.
Take number 3, okay?
We kept wandering around until we eventually made our way over to the most popular attraction.
Today we are at the Shire. Tomorrow, we start our trek to Mordor.
This is a joke we kept making since we visited Switzerland last year, and we saw the valley that Rivendell from Lord of the Rings was based on.
Welcome to Rivendell, Frodo Baggins.
Crumbs went everywhere. So our plan was to spend the afternoon hydrating and kind of mentally preparing for the hike tomorrow, but that didn't really happen. We spent the next few hours not able to be more than like 30 seconds away from our bathroom. We were hopeful it would pass, and finally by 9 p.m. we were able to make our way out of the room, over to the bar,
Carbo loading.
and eat the least spiced food they had on the menu, which was pasta. But this wave of energy was short-lived. I was barely able to force mine down, and Alyssa had maybe a third of hers. And when we went back to our room, we proceeded to spend all night being the most sick that either one of us had ever been. We lost any amount of nutrition or hydration that we had left in our body and slept for probably no more than 2 or 3 hours. So, with that being said, stay tuned to see how we managed the biggest physical challenge of our lives. You ready, babe? Ready?
Let's go.
Oh my god.
Oh, you hear it.